Hey everybody, and welcome back to Hunter x Hunter Saturdays. Now this week we're going to be discussing Nen Enhancement. Got a lot of cool stuff to cover, so without any further ado, let's get right into it. So Nen Enhancement is not too complicated, guys. It's simply the ability to enhance your physical abilities or the abilities of an object through your Nen. Now, you can do more than just this. You can actually, when you start getting to the higher levels, or, maybe you don't even have to be that high level. Maybe it just kind of depends on your natural affinities. But we do know some of the more complex things you can do with it are, enhancing your healing abilities, your natural abilities to recover, which is really big. I know we saw after Gon's fight with Gedo where he got hurt, he was able to heal much quicker than expected. Even Wing was taken aback at the speed at which he was able to heal. Now, you can say whatever about Gon having natural talent, natural abilities, but he had just started learning Nen at the time, and that increased flow of his aura could have contributed to that quicker healing. And we also know that you can increase the rate of growth for yourself through enhancement as well. And, Gon is a natural talent. His father is Jing. Wing said something like, I think it was 1 in 10 million, him and Killua were, when it comes to their natural affinity and talent with Nen. But even beyond that, we saw how quickly Gon was able to grow throughout this entire series and how strong he was able to get. It's one of those things where being an enhancer probably had a pretty sizable role in that. Now, according to Hisoka, enhancers are simple and determined. Most of them never lie, hide nothing, and are very straightforward in their actions or in their thinking. Their words and actions are often dominated by their feelings. They are generally very selfish and focused on their goals, and this is reflected in their Nen, as enhancers typically rely on simple and uncomplicated Nen abilities. Now, that's just Hisoka's personality test. It's not perfect, but it fits the mold for most characters, especially Gon. It's like he definitely hit Gon nail on the head with that one. But that last part, talking about all their abilities being kind of practical and very simple, it's very true, because what we see with most Nen abilities for enhancers, they're just applications of the basics and advanced techniques, putting them together, but they're able to make them much, much stronger because of enhancement. Great example of this is when Uvogin coated his body in Ken. Sniper bullets, no effect on him. Anti-tank missile, walked it off like it was nothing. And obviously, Uvogin's Phantom Troupe member, one of the best, top tier fighter in the verse, for sure, no doubt in my mind. But still, like we were talking about, you can enhance your natural growth rate. So if you're an enhancer and you really set your mind to it and you go, oh, I'm going to focus on growth and becoming better, and you put all your effort into that, you should be able to hit Uvogin's level. And it's one of those just amazing things that enhancers have. Now, one other important thing about enhancers is that they're actually the most balanced category between offense and defense. This is fantastic because when you have that ability to enhance your defensive ability on top of enhanced healing factor, well, if you're fighting against someone and they can't outdamage that healing factor coupled with your defense, and all you can do is, try, but they're healing, they're defending against it, and all they have to do is walk up to you, and a casual punch might be enough, because a lot of characters, and this is common throughout any series you look at, when you get people that can use special cool powers, they neglect physical training. And it's something that definitely you could see happening in the Hunter x Hunter world, where if you're a manipulator or a conjurer or an emitter or specialist, whatever, right, you might neglect training your enhancement, just being able to defend yourself naturally with Nen, because you're like, oh, I'm never going to get close up to anyone. That doesn't matter. But guess what? All these enhancers are close quarters combat fighters. That's what enhancement is best suited for. So if you can't get past those defenses, if they're out healing the damage you can output, you can't deal enough to break through, all they got to do is walk up to you, one punch. It might kill you. I mean, we saw the way Morel was sweating when Gon charged up his Jajanken. And Morel, one of the top guys in the Hunters Association, sweating at a child, an actual child who was known Nen for so few time. I mean, Morel has known Nen for longer than Gon has been alive, and he's sweating at this look, at the just from looking at that punch. It's terrifying. Enhancement can really become quite the spectacle when the right person is using it and when it's used effectively for its main purposes. Now that we've covered what enhancement is, let's just go over some of the coolest enhancers from the series, breaking down some of their abilities and what they've been able to do. Now, first off, one of our main cast, Gon, cool guy, awesome, forever in our hearts. We love this little guy. Now, he's done a lot of great stuff throughout this series, but his main enhancement technique is his rock. Through his Jajanken, his first choice rock, probably his strongest, easily his strongest actually, not probably. It's definitely his strongest ability. It's pretty simple though. He charges his aura into his fist with Ko and then punches you with it. Now, depending on how much time he has, he can actually build his Ren up to make the punch even more powerful. And it's also possible that that restriction of charging it up can make it even more powerful, not just through the Ren, but through that actual, okay, if I charge it up, because Nen can become more powerful through restrictions and vows. That's one thing that could possibly add to how powerful this ability is. Now, I briefly covered it earlier, but right before the Chimera Ant arc began, he's outside with Morel, and Morel's like, prove to me that you can keep up, right? You have to show me, you have to. And he's out there and he's getting pissed off because of everything that happened with Wing and Neferpito, and he's charging it up, and Morel just fucking loses it. He's sweating, and they call it off like, okay, he's not gonna hit you, and Gon's like, sorry, that might have killed you. And like I was talking about earlier, even top level guys, people that have been using aura for their entire lives, fighting, doing things that hunters do, if you're not an enhancer, you might not be able to absorb these blows, even from Gon, who's young and still new to Nen. Obviously he's a prodigy, has a lot of natural talent, but it just goes to show enhancement, when you use it correctly and use it how it's supposed to be used, it's deadly powerful. Now, Wing is also Gon's teacher, but he's also an enhancer. We don't know too much about his abilities. We know that scene when he was training everyone, he was talking about Hatsu. He just kind of puts his hand up on that wall and activates his Hatsu and creates that massive gash. He also was able to, use that little paper, use some Nen on it, and slice through a can. He's got great control over his Nen. We don't know anything about his abilities, but safe to assume he's quite powerful, being able to just activate his Hatsu like that and crush a wall. It should be pretty telling that he's not someone that you'd want to meet in a dark alley. He can probably fend for himself. Not to say he's going to be able to take out the highest level guys, but he should be able to keep himself safe against most hunters or evildoers that he might encounter. Now, one thing we did get to see him do with enhancement, though, is when we were back in Heaven's Arena and Zushi was fighting Killua. Killua was beating that ass, and he's had enough of it. He starts getting pissed off, goes to activate his Nen, his win condition here. Killua ain't got no Nen. He loses that every single time. But the second he starts doing that, Wing is like, I'm shutting that shit down. And he screams and drowns out all the sounds in Heaven's Arena, which is extremely impressive because you have loudspeaker announcements, you have all the sounds from the fighting and all the sounds from the fans, and he drowned all of it out. The entire stadium shook with his voice, and that just goes to show a strong enhancer who's got good use over their enhancement abilities can just do some pretty crazy things with simple stuff, just screaming and doing stuff like that. It's really cool how enhancement can be used in methods like that, as opposed to just, charging up your fist and punching. You can do other stuff with it too, and it's got a little bit of versatility in that sense, despite its simplicity. Now, the next two enhancers are actually guys that we don't really see use enhancement specifically. First up, we have Netero, and we all know that his 100-type Guanyin Bodhisattva is terrifying. And we also know that Netero in his prime was the most powerful Nen master, and even in his old age, he was stated to be quite the menace. Nav and Morel were like, yeah, we are not on this guy's level. He is a cut above the rest. But Netero's a modest guy, so he would never say it himself. He's like, I've fallen off. But the Guanyin Bodhisattva is terrifying. Now, it's so fucking cool, but it's not an enhancement ability, right? He creates it through conjuration and controls it through manipulation. Now, obviously, I think every fist, every attack combination he has is enhanced with his enhancement abilities. It makes sense, and it would go to show why it's so powerful, because he's not a natural manipulator or conjurer, but it's powerful because his enhancement abilities are so good it can make up for the fact that that's the extent of what he can make through those versions of Nen. Now, it was stated that he executes each attack in 1/10 of a second. So when you have a construct of this size and enhanced by one of the most powerful Nen users of all time, who falls into the category of enhancement, each strike is doing massive, massive damage. And it's so scary. And it's also possible that at times he conceals it with Ian, because we know that one time he smacked Neferpita with it, and she didn't even know what happened. Now, whether that was because it came out in 1/10 of a second or he was using In, either way, it's very terrifying. One of the 3 royal guards, people that when Netero first looked at her, he was like, oh yeah, I can't beat that. But he was able to, with that ability, super terrifying. And Meruem, the king, even stated, he was like, based on the number of hands that the Bodhisattva has, the amount of combinations of attacks he could do are nearly infinite. I mean, he's got 100 hands, and he can combine them in any which way. And then on top of that, he's executing them in 1/10 of a second. That the 1/10 of a second, I know I keep saying it, but it really is so terrifying. When you look at a man who's not a natural manipulator, and that's what comes down to executing that, it's so scary. But it just goes to show that that prayer that he went through for all those years, practicing those punches, practicing his Nen, paid off and led to him becoming the monster he is now. But rest in peace, our favorite guy. Now, next up we have Menthotha Yupi. Same thing from the Chimera Ant arc. Now, this is a terrifying guy. I think of the 3 royal guards, he was the one I was the most scared of. Poof, kind of, I don't know. I never was afraid of him. I always thought he was weak. I always, I always kind of shoved him off to the side. Like, okay, I don't think about you. No one cares about you. And Pito, obviously scary with everything she was able to do to Kite, but her abilities were much more supportive and defensive to be able to support the king, as opposed to being an offensive attack force. That's where Menthotha Yupi comes in, and he is so terrifying. Now, his output was stated to be higher than Netero's, which, knowing that Netero was once regarded as the most powerful Nen master, goes to show just how scary Yupi is. And we also know that when he went in that little tentacle mode, if you remember, he was just like flailing around everywhere, all these tentacles, and this was after Knuckle had punched him with his ability, his APR, where he can lend you some of his aura, and then it ramps up interest. He accidentally hits him, right? He wasn't even trying to hit him, just one of these tendrils that he was flailing around casually hit him on accident, and it basically paid off the interest plus the initial payment. Like, that's ridiculous that he's casually performing feats like that. And basically, he's a monster, and, we don't know too much about him. None of his abilities are really known how they're manifested. He did that thing where he creates the eyes and the tendrils, and then he went into his, demon, rampage, violence form, or whatever, where he, turned into, a Minotaur, Centaur. Minotaur, Centaur? I don't know what the difference is. I think Centaur, now that I mention it. Not exactly sure, though. But it was also stated that his aura was 10 times that of Morel's, who we know, obviously one of the greats from the Hunters Association, high-level guy. And that just goes to show how terrifying Yupi is. But with Netero here in this example of, enhancers that don't really use enhancement beyond its simple applications, they go through other routes to achieve their goals, I think that's the way to go. In particular, Netero, where he's creating some other type of construct to attack with and then enhance it with his aura. I think that is definitely the way to go if you're an enhancer, because anyone can just activate Ko on their hand like Gon, enhance it with Ren given the opportunity, and hit you. Any enhancer can do that, and it's going to be ridiculously powerful. But if you're able to do something like Netero, obviously not the same thing, create your own spin on it, use your creativity, do what's going to work best for you. But I think that is definitely how you're going to become the strongest as possible as an enhancer. Instead of trying to just focus on the basics in hand-to-hand combat, you could end up losing to someone who has just a Nen ability that prevents you from getting close. So having more diversity, being able to include that, is definitely important if you're an enhancer. Now, I know I was just talking about how Netero is a great example of the route you should take if you're an enhancer. I'm going to talk about Castro, who's an example of someone who you should absolutely not follow if you're an enhancer. So, during his fight with Hisoka in Heaven's Arena, Hisoka stated that if Castro had focused simply on enhancement and not gotten distracted and lost himself in the weeds, gotten himself taken away from the basics, he could have been a top 5 Nen user. And that's pretty ridiculous if you actually sit down and try and construct what that top 5 looks like. I mean, obviously, Meruem wouldn't be included in this, but he would be up there with some very intimidating names, and that just shows how much potential Castro had as a fighter. But we all know how that fight ends, and Hisoka states at the end of that fight, too, he's like, oh, this is what happens. You get too distracted, you stop focusing on the basics, and then you lose. And it's one of those things where if Castro had not gotten so caught up in this idea of creating a double and everything and just focused on making his enhancement as powerful as possible, yeah, it's great to have a clone that can, attack with enhanced abilities, but when you're going that far away from your natural category and you're doing all these other things with your Nen that you cannot focus on your enhancement, you're just detracting yourself from what you're mainly focused on doing. So not too much to say about Castro. He's just a great example of someone who had a lot of potential and could have been a very impressive fighter, but because he didn't focus on enhancement and he got lost in the Nen sauce, he ended up just losing to Hisoka with pretty simple tactics, honestly, and Hisoka really gassed him up, saying that he could have been top 5. Really insane to me when I think about that. Really good example, though. Just don't be like Castro. That is not the way. Now, lastly, we're going to cover 3 enhancers from the Phantom Troupe. Now, the Phantom Troupe is absolutely, hands down, one of my all-time favorite organizations of characters from any series, anime, manga, TV, movies, you name it. You cannot get cooler than the Phantom Troupe. Now, first off, we have Nobunaga. Now, we don't actually know what his Nen ability is, but we do know that Shalnark, when they were talking that one time, he was like, you know what, we've got easily replaceable abilities, so it doesn't matter if we die, and that makes sense. If you're an enhancer and you're in an organization like the Phantom Troupe, your responsibility is offense and defense. You're the vanguard, you're the tank at the front, but you can also deal out just as much damage as you can tank, right? One thing I do want to mention with Nobunaga here, though, is that ability he used where he activated that Ring of Nen. It's not really an ability, but he did that and he said, I'm swinging the second something enters. That's a great use of N in combination with being an enhancer, because you know that sword swing is probably one of the most powerful sword swings in the world of Hunter x Hunter. So, anything that's getting hit by that is taking significant damage, if not being killed. Great use of some of the other applications of Nen to boost your capabilities as an enhancer. Now, next up, we have Thinx, who I think of all the enhancers, when it comes down to the actual enhancement abilities, his is like the coolest in my opinion. Uvogin's is really cool too, but it's simple. I like Thinx's because it actually, requires some effort and is a really cool application. Now, it's called Ripper Cyclotron, which is that's fucking awesome. That's such a cool name. That is Ripper Cyclotron. That should be the name of a monster truck or something. I think it's really cool. Now, it's pretty simple. All he does is he doesn't even have to hold his hand, but when he does it, he just kind of like holds his shoulder here and starts rotating. And with each rotation, it grows stronger and stronger. And during the Chimera Ant arc, he was going up against one of the ants that could use Nen. They obviously have ridiculous natural defensive abilities too. He did 15 rotations, crushed it, no problem. And then he even stated after that, he was like, about half that probably would have sufficed. Maybe I overdid it a little bit, which either says something that he's not good at managing how strong it gets. He's not he's not used to having to rotate it too much because he's just that strong, or he's not good at understanding how much his opponent is going to be able to take, or maybe he just doesn't really know how powerful it can get. Now, one thing I was thinking about here is, we know Nen is super convoluted. It's got all these intricacies, so complex, but it's possible that with each rotation, beyond just the fact that, okay, we know each rotation it gets stronger, right? So let's say each rotation is plus 10, just for this example, right? But because Nen has all these little things, little nitpicky things that can make it stronger, because with each rotation eventually, and maybe this wouldn't kick in until you know, depending on, like, let's say Thinx, for example. He obviously works out a lot. You can tell, jacked kind of guy. But maybe once his muscles start fatiguing, instead of +10, it's now +15, +20 or something, because it's taking more of a toll on his body to do those rotations. And it was not stated anywhere that there's a limit to this. So there's a potential that Thinx has the highest destructive capability in the verse, beyond the King Meruem, beyond Netero, Yuppie, beyond even Uvogin. Thinx potentially with the Ripper Cyclotron could do it. Now, we just don't know. And maybe one day down the line, if the series comes back into circulation, Thinx will be like, okay, 100 rotations, that's my max. Let's see if this is enough, right? We'll never know for sure, but as far as we're aware, there's no limit, and that's really exciting to think about. And yeah, I think Thinx's ability is really cool, and he's a really fun character in the troupe as well. Now, lastly, our boy, rest in peace, Uvogin. Oh, I miss you, buddy. He's so cool. He's awesome. Now, we've actually seen him use enhancement in a couple different ways. Firstly, he was able to just shout strong enough to kill someone at close range and force the other Phantom Troupe members to have to, like, shield themselves from it, because that's how deadly just his scream is. That's the mastery he has over enhancement. It's probably safe to assume that Uvogin might be, behind Netero, the second strongest enhancer in the verse. Obviously, neither of them are actually alive now, so I guess not anymore. But if you're looking at GOAT status, greatest of all time, right? Number 1 is Netero. Number 2, at least for enhancers, we're just looking at the enhancement category, probably Uvogin, unless you want to say, okay, well, Thinx, because he can maybe go infinite, that he could be stronger. Who knows? But beyond that, we also saw him using an insane healing factor. You know, he was fighting against the Shadow Beast Rabid Dog, gave him some pretty gnarly wounds, and he basically healed them like it was nothing pretty quickly, minutes, maybe even less than a minute. He healed it really quick, and goes to show when you reach that mastery of enhancement and you're at the highest level, you can just kind of heal up attacks from even, you know, I don't think the Shadow Beasts are like ridiculously strong, but they're impressive fighters, good Nen users hired by the Mafia, so they're not pushovers. Really impressive feat from Uvogin, but the creme de la creme for him is his big bang impact. Very simple once again, a lot like Gon's Rock. Simply charges up aura into his fist with Ko, and then boom, delivers a punch. Now, it was stated that it's a simple straight right, and it's possible that it is only a straight right, and because he can only use it with his right hand, and he has to do specifically a straight right, can't do like a hook, an uppercut, or anything, it has to be a straight right. If that is a condition, we don't know for certain, but if it is, that could play into why it's so powerful, because that condition makes it more powerful. But this was ridiculous. It created a massive crater. The force was stated to be that of a small missile, and Uvogin, when he was charging it up, he was basically trying to make it a nuke. He was like, I think I'll go for the power of a nuclear warhead here. And I mean, hard to say if that's something he could actually accomplish. You know, if he really did, you know, maybe if he did what Gon does, where he charges up his Ren too, he very well might be capable of doing it. I would not put it past him. Uvogin is a terrifying fighter. Now, he also used this technique against Kurapika, and Kurapika was in Emperor Time during the fight, and even this was enough to just shatter his arm. And during Emperor Time, when he's got the Kurta glow in his eyes, he's 100% in every category, effectively making him a master enhancer. So the fact that Uvogin's just shattering his arm like that goes to show the terrifying might that Uvogin has. And all the Phantom Troupe enhancers are so cool. I definitely think Thinx has the greatest ability of all of them, though. Just, it's so cool, and it's even more interesting to think about the fact that it could be infinitely powerful. Oof, oof, oof. Oh, it just gets me excited just thinking about it. Alright guys, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like the video if you did. Leave some comments below talking about some of your favorite enhancers in the series. Make sure to subscribe for more anime and manga content, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.